No place for a grudge. The quarrel between Lars and his brother John had started months ago, way back in March. During the final winter ski race, like all the other boys from their village and the surrounding farms, Lars and John had taken part. Lars had been so sure he would win. No boy in the village was more swift than he. Certainly he had expected no competition from his brother. Although John was a year older, Lars could beat him in every sport. But Lars had been wrong. It had been John who won. "You cheated!" Lars had stormed at him in the lodge when the race was over. "You tricked me. Just as I started to pass you on the last slope, you struck my ski with your ski pole. You did it on purpose." "Don't be silly," answered John scornfully. He was proud with the rare delight of winning, and it led him to make a joke. "The way you make your skis, it was probably a splinter that tripped you." A loud roar of laughter filled the lodge, for Lars' impatience with tasks that took time was known to all. The long, dull hours of sanding and polishing that made John's skis so satin smooth were not for Lars. He was more likely to carve out a pair from soft wood overnight and break them the next day. "That's Lars, all right," the boys taunted now, tripped by a splinter. Lars was proud and quick-tempered. Laughter like this was even harder for him to take than defeat. Furiously he had stamped out of the lodge and skied home without waiting for his brother. John had regretted the joke. He knew how deeply the laughter of the boys had hurt his proud brother. So in the days that followed he tried to show Lars that he was sorry. He whittled a horn for Lars to call the goats and cows. He even confided to his brother his dream of saving the summer's gate tips for a wonderful harmonica at the village store. "It is this long!" exclaimed John, and he measured the air with his hands. "The music I could make on it you wouldn't believe. I know I can save the price of it this summer." In that section of Norway, the roads that the tourists had to follow cut across pastures and through fields of wheat and potatoes. Each field was divided from the next by a fence, and few tourists wanted to get out and open each gate, drive through, and then get out and close the gate again. So boys from the farms were always there to run ahead and do the job. The handful of coins which the tourists would give the boys was the only money that they might earn throughout the year. Lars, too, had planned what he would do with his gate tips. He would have the best carpenter in the village and make him a pair of skis. They would be more beautiful than any skis in the whole countryside. They would be made of the toughest wood, polished to a satin glow. On them he would fairly fly over the icy crust of the snow. Oh, no one would have skis as splendid as his. But Lars did not tell John his plans. John would find out soon enough when he was left far behind at the ski meets. When John found that his friendliness to Lars meant some return from his brother, he withdrew in hurt silence. "Why is Lars holding such a grudge against me?" he wondered. Maybe it had not been kind to make the joke, but he had tried to show Lars that he was sorry. So summer came, and it was time for the women and younger children to leave for the upland pastures high in the mountains. Not so long ago John and Lars had gone with them, driving the cows and goats, helping with the milk and cheese making. But now at 12 and 13 they would stay with the men. On the afternoon before the leave-taking, the boy's father directed that all cows and goats should be driven into the barn lot, and there they could be more easily started on their way the next morning. "You, Lars, keep them moving, and John, see that all the stragglers are rounded up and each gate closed." It was a long, dusty task to drive the cattle in from the far fields. The sun shone hot, the cattle moved with a sleepy slowness, and Lars, looking back, saw John, pausing often to whistle bird calls until there was a bright answering flutter in the bushes. "Look at John," thought Lars angrily. "He is almost a field behind the last cow. To think that he should beat me on skis." The last stragglers were entering the barn lot, and the milking was already finished before Lars saw John adrift into sight again. Just then their mother stepped to the door and called them to supper. John woke from his daydream and trotted toward the house, forgetting to close the barn lot gate. Lars opened his mouth to call out, but suddenly he shut it again. It was John's job to close the gates. Their father had said so. He had not told Lars to remind John. But somehow Lars did not enjoy the good supper of fish and potatoes and milk. He mumbled a hurried thanks for the meal and escaped to bed. At dawn, as Lars stumbled toward the barn, John's shocked cry told him they would not be starting now for many hours to come. The cattle dotted the fields, grazing on the green wheat tips, trampling on the potato plants. The boy's father appeared in the doorway of the barn. "Which one of you left the gate open?" he thundered. "It must have been I," John murmured miserably. "Good for nothing!" roared his father. "We will all work today to repair this damage. Now tomorrow you will go with the women to the upland pastures." But that is for the children," cried John, stung to protest. "And what else are you?" his father replied angrily. Lars slipped out of sight. "I didn't know this would happen," he thought with a twinge of remorse, "or I would have told John the gate was open." But in his heart he wondered. All that summer, with John away, Lars had as much work as he could handle, opening and closing gates for the tourists who came. His hoard of coins grew, and he knew at last that he had the price of his skis. But the thought did not give him the pleasure he had expected. "I will have them in time for the first snow," he promised himself, tucking the coins into a woolen sock. "Just wait until the Christmas ski jump. On skis like the ones I shall have, I will set a new record." John and the women returned from the uplands, and the fall term of school began. Still Lars did not order his skis. Since his return, John had said not a word about his vanished ring of a harmonica. Instead, he settled down to making a pair of skis even more splendid than his old ones. "Does he think he's going to beat me again?" Lars thought bitterly. "He'll see when I get mine." The fall term off school was over in December, and everyone then joined in the long, serious, and full-time celebration of the Christmas holidays. For 2 wonderful weeks, not just one day, Christmas ruled Norway. Only the really necessary work was done. There was no hunting or trapping or netting of fish, and in the house even the mousetraps lay idle. All through the country the courts were closed, for this was the season of perfect peace, and there was no place in it for Lars' grudge against John. Soon it would be Christmas Eve. Lars' heart was heavy. What could he do to bring back peace between himself and John? He had not ordered his skis, and suddenly he knew he was never going to. He would get along another winter with the clumsy ones he had made himself. There was something far more important that he must do with his hoard of coins. With a new lift in his heart, he strapped on his skis and set off for the village. His woolen sock, bulging with coins, was tucked beneath his jacket. When he came flying back over the icy crust instead of the sock full of coins, Lars had the long, gleaming harmonica hidden beneath his jacket. "I will tell John that it is really his by right," thought Lars with satisfaction, "for it was my grudge against him that kept me from telling him about the open gate." He felt light-headed with relief. "I'll tell him that I knew he did not mean to trick me in the race. I will say that maybe it was not even his pole that threw me." Lars smiled. "I'll tell him that maybe it was a splinter that made me fall." But when at last he found John in the tool house, he did not tell him anything. For John, rubbing the last shining coat of wax into those splendid new skis, smiled shyly at Lars. "There you are," he said, waving offhandedly at the skis. "If you can't beat me with those, you'd better take to wings." Lars stood for a moment speechless before the gift of John's hands and heart. He felt Christmas come rushing into the very center of his being, on a warm river of peace and happiness. Then silently he took the harmonica from his jacket and held it out. "For you, my brother," he said.